My name is Silas Merrick, and I've been married to Maribel for 17 years. That's a long time. Long enough for habits to become patterns and patterns to harden into silence. We had our routines: coffee in the morning, separate Netflix queues at night. Not cold exactly, just cooled. We had a life built like a porch swing, familiar creaks, some frayed ropes, but still hanging. That Saturday morning was like most others. I pattered into the kitchen in my robe and socks, the kind with worn heels and one stubborn hole near the toe. The coffee machine sputtered behind me, spitting steam into the quiet as if protesting its own job. Outside, the lawn glittered with dew, and the old sprinkler ticked away like it had its own language. Peaceful, forgettable, even. Until I saw the photo. I wasn't even looking for it. Just thumbing through my phone while waiting for the brew to finish, tapping through notifications with sleepy indifference. And then Facebook served it to me, right there at the top of my feed, like it couldn't wait. Maribel, my wife. Her smile framed in soft office lighting, standing way too close to Trent. Trent, the work husband. The guy she joked about. The one she claimed made boring Zoom calls bearable. He's harmless, she once said, rolling her eyes. You're not really jealous, are you? There he was. His arm casually slung around her shoulders like he'd done it 100 times. Her head tilted in, her eyes half closed, lips parted mid-laugh like the camera had caught them in the middle of something private. Something soft. Something mine. The caption underneath was the real punch. My real partner. Hashtag #WorkIsBanned for life. My thumb hovered. I didn't blink. My heart didn't pound. There was no cinematic gasp or sudden tremble in my hands. Just a slow, mechanical emptiness spreading through my ribs. Like someone had opened a hatch in my chest and quietly vacuumed the air out. No panic. No shouting. Just a clean, sharp line slicing through 17 years. I walked back toward the counter, the coffee now finished, filling the air with a scent that suddenly meant nothing. I poured the mug like I always did, black with a splash of oat milk. The steam curled up toward my face, but I didn't sip. Instead, I opened the side drawer, the one beneath the toaster where we kept things too awkward to categorize. Batteries. Screwdrivers. A broken pair of sunglasses. In the beige folder. I had printed the papers weeks ago. That part of me, some quiet, doubting part, must have known. There had been signs. The extra hours. The polished replies. The way she turned her phone screen down when I walked into the room. Little things, like breadcrumbs left not to guide me, but to see if I'd follow. I placed the folder on the kitchen table, right where she usually dropped her purse. The light through the window hit it perfectly, like a spotlight. No note. No dramatic flourish. Just the facts, waiting. Then I walked back to the counter and picked up my phone. My fingers didn't hesitate. No trembling. No edits. I opened Facebook, tapped into the comment box beneath her photo, and typed, "Congratulations. The divorce papers are on the kitchen table." I hit post. No second guessing. No drafts. A small bubble of adrenaline rose in me. Not anger, but clarity. The kind you get when you finally wipe a mirror clean and see what's actually been staring back all along. I didn't linger. I didn't wait to see who'd comment next, or if the likes would stall. I set my phone face down on the counter, took the mug, and walked outside. The morning was bright. The kind of quiet suburban brightness that made you forget that people lied, that vows unraveled, that soft betrayals wore hashtags now. I turned the garden hose toward the rose bushes, letting the water run slow and even. The soil drank it up without protest. I thought of 17 years. The anniversaries, the vacations, the burnt Thanksgiving turkey we laughed about for months. The first time she kissed my wrist instead of my lips. The way she cried when her mother died and clung to me like I was the last unshakable thing in her world. Then I thought of how she leaned into Trent like he was home. The water pooled under the grass, soaking the roots. A few neighborhood kids rode by on bikes, their laughter echoing faintly like it came from another planet. I kept watering. My hand steady. My heart even. I didn't need to rehearse what I'd say when she got home. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't demand an explanation she'd twist into apology-shaped lies. I wouldn't beg for something she'd already given to someone else in boardrooms and bar lounges. No, I would keep watering the lawn. Let the world do what it does. Let her scroll through her notifications, smiling at hearts and thumbs up until she saw mine. Until she realized what I'd done. What I'd known. What I had waited to confirm. There would be no shouting match. No scene on the porch. Just the sound of her key not quite fitting in the lock she assumed she still owned. I adjusted the hose nozzle, making the stream gentler for the lilies. Her lilies. She always loved those. Bought them every April for the kitchen table. I almost laughed. Almost. Inside, the coffee cooled. The folder waited. And me? I stood in the sun, robe fluttering a little in the breeze, hand firm on the hose. I wasn't broken. I wasn't even bitter. I was awake. Finally. That morning, she lost a husband. But I gained clarity. The call came around 7:42 p.m. I remember the exact time because I was halfway through organizing my tax files, something I'd been putting off for months. The soft hum of the ceiling fan circled above me. A jazz playlist played low from my laptop speaker. Calm. Still. Methodical. Then her name lit up the screen, Maribel. I watched it ring twice. 3 times. I didn't feel heat in my chest. Just a hollow curiosity. Like someone peering into a window of a life that didn't belong to them anymore. I let it ring once more before answering. Hey, she said, drawing out the word like sugar on her tongue. I could hear her smiling through the line, that high-pitched cheeriness she used when she knew she was already in the wrong but wanted to disarm you first. You're not really mad, are you? She continued before I could even answer. I mean, come on, babe. It was a joke. Everyone does that stuff on Facebook. It's harmless. There it was. The shift. The manipulation wrapped in feigned innocence. I didn't speak. I just listened, leaning back in the chair, letting her talk. Her words tumbled out quickly, too quickly, like someone hurrying past a crime scene they caused. I mean, you know how people post stuff like that. It's just office humor. Trent's like, he's like a brother. You know how close our whole team is. People thought it was funny. She gave a nervous little laugh that scratched at the edge of desperation. Honestly, I think you're overreacting. I could almost picture her, pacing somewhere, maybe outside the hotel, maybe in her rental car, biting a thumbnail and checking her reflection in the rearview mirror every few seconds. Still dressed from whatever conference mixer she had been to, still running the script in her head like a PR professional trying to reframe a scandal. And you know how social media is, people blow things out of proportion. I didn't even think before I posted. Trent said something funny and, ugh, I shouldn't have tagged him. That's what you're upset about, right? I let a full beat pass. Long enough for her to fill it if she wanted to. She didn't. That alone told me she was waiting for a lifeline. I finally said, evenly, check the kitchen. The silence on her end was a different kind of loud. I imagined her blinking, confused, thinking maybe I was making a joke. That I was going to say something flippant next. That she could still talk her way through this. Over it. Around it. What? She said, her voice lighter, a little higher. What do you mean? I repeated it, calmly. Check. The kitchen. Another pause. Then came the brittle laugh. Wait, you're joking, right? Silas? You didn't actually. Come on. Don't be dramatic. She was unraveling, just a little. Her voice cracked at the end of the sentence, though she tried to keep the lilt of control. I could hear her mind flipping through options, trying to land on the one that would steer this conversation towards safety. I didn't respond. I just leaned forward and ended the call. She tried calling back immediately. I declined it without hesitation. My phone buzzed again and again. Then a message popped up. Silas, seriously. Don't do this. It's not what you think. Can we just talk? Another buzz. I'm coming home Monday. We can talk then, okay. I turned my phone off completely. I stared at the wall for a long moment after that. Not out of regret, not even satisfaction. Just observation. Like I'd stepped outside of time and was now watching the ending of a long play I'd accidentally starred in. The final act was unfolding, the curtains drawing closed, slowly, methodically, like velvet sliding over an old truth. I thought about the look she'd have on her face when she walked into the kitchen and saw the beige folder. How her fingers would hover over it before opening the flap. How her eyes would scan the papers, the asset inventory, the division agreement, the signature lines. How the air might rush out of her chest not from shock, but from recognition. Because somewhere deep down, she had to know this was coming. Not because of one photo. Not because of a hashtag. But because somewhere along the way, she stopped treating me like someone who mattered. And I had finally started acting accordingly. Outside, the sprinklers kicked on again. The rhythmic tick-tick-tick of water arcing across the yard filled the air. I poured myself another glass of water, slid open the back door, and stepped onto the patio. The sky was darkening, stars just beginning to peek out from behind the purple wash of evening. I sat down in the chair I'd refinished last summer. She had never really liked it, said it looked too rustic. I always thought it was honest. I thought of her scrolling through her feed again and again, deleting comments, maybe messaging Trent in a panic, wondering what people would think, wondering if they'd connect the dots. But mostly, I wondered if she'd understand that this wasn't some heat-of-the-moment decision. This was time catching up. This was consequence with a filing tab. This was clarity in Manila. No raised voice. No broken plates. Just a sentence, 5 words, that told her everything she needed to know. Check the kitchen. Monday morning felt unnaturally still. The kind of stillness that comes right before a controlled demolition, when the charges are set, the area cleared, and all that's left is waiting for someone to push the button. I didn't sleep much the night before. Not because I was conflicted, but because I was methodical. I'd laid everything out: timeline, documentation, evidence. I wasn't pacing or second-guessing. I was editing, cleaning up a mess someone else made with smiles and hashtags. And I knew exactly where to start. Durant and Voss had a strict code of conduct. I knew that because Maribel used to quote it when bragging about how professional her team was. They had monthly compliance meetings, annual refreshers, zero tolerance for anything that even looked like favoritism between superiors and their direct reports. And Trent? He reported directly to her. She was his evaluation officer. She signed off on his travel, his bonus justifications, even his training approvals. And yet there she was, smiling into his shoulder like the end credits were rolling on their Hallmark movie romance. So I typed slowly, carefully, clean subject line, conduct concern, Durant and Voss conference. I didn't use her name in the body. Not right away. I structured it the way an internal whistleblower would. Detached, measured, impersonal. Just a concerned party bringing potential misconduct to light. Please see attached. The enclosed screenshot contains a social media post shared publicly by a Durant and Voss employee during the firm's recent regional sales retreat. Given the visible familiarity between a supervisor and her direct report and the language used, this may present a violation of company policy regarding manager-subordinate boundaries. The photo was timestamped during company-funded travel hours. No signature. No email address linked to me. I used a secure, anonymous Dropbox plugin from an old burner account I once used to report a payroll glitch at my own job. The attachment: a clean screenshot of the Facebook post with the caption and timestamp visible. No extra commentary. Just the facts. I stared at the screen for one final second. Then I hit send. The moment I did, a strange calm settled over me. It wasn't vindictive. I didn't want to see her burn. I just wanted things to be what they were. Truth exposed. Consequences invited. I wasn't going to scream into a void while she laughed in boardrooms and typed winking emojis into Slack threads. By early afternoon, the post was gone. I hadn't saved the screenshot to just one folder. I had backups. Cloud. Drive. Offline USB. But the deletion told me all I needed to know. She'd been tipped off. Or worse, someone from inside had already reached out to her. That's when Jude messaged. Jude wasn't just a friend. He was the kind of friend you keep from high school because life keeps throwing you into the same orbit. We used to call him Firewall because back in senior year, he figured out how to spoof the school's internet filter and stream games on classroom monitors. Now, he worked in the IT department at Durant and Voss. He didn't talk much about work, and I never asked. But we played cards once a month, traded memes, checked in after holidays. I hadn't even told him about the Facebook post yet. His text came through like lightning cutting the sky. HR just flagged her. I stared at those words for a beat. I read them again. Then again. He followed up, your wife. Maribel. That post must have triggered an alert or something. I'm not in HR, but Celia just asked for her entire work laptop session history from the conference weekend. She didn't look happy. I didn't reply right away. Not because I was shocked, but because it was actually happening. The charges were set. And now someone was pacing toward the button. Later, over the phone, Jude told me more. They're pulling chat logs. Calendar entries. The shuttle manifest. Apparently other employees had already complained that she and Trent kept disappearing during the trip. And someone mentioned that they requested a shared Uber for an off-site dinner, on the company card. I closed my eyes and let the words wash over me. So they're taking it seriously? I asked. Oh yeah, he said, with a whistle. Celia's got that HR tone. You know the one. All polite fury and surgical calm. She's building a file. I've seen her do it before. When she gets quiet, someone's career is about to evaporate. I didn't smile. Didn't gloat. But I did stare out the window for a long time after that call. Watching the breeze ripple across the lawn I watered 2 days ago. The grass had bounced back quickly, resilient, like it didn't even remember what had been poured into its soil. By evening, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Maribel. Hey, weird thing. Did you see someone reported my Facebook post to HR? It's not a big deal, but it's just annoying. HR asked a bunch of questions. Like, really dumb ones. Did you see it? She was testing the water, fishing for information with a hook wrapped in casualness. I didn't respond. Then came another message. Seriously though, who would do that? It's just a dumb joke. Now Harlan's all serious about policy optics. Like, come on. Optics. She always did love that word. The illusion of order, the surface image of things being fine. As long as it looked okay, the truth could be distorted, postponed, filtered. But truth doesn't need an audience. It just needs a moment. And hers was already unfolding behind boardroom doors. There's a moment when the shift happens, not with noise, but with stillness. That was the space I was in when I opened my laptop Monday night, logged into my financial accounts, and began moving with precision. Maribel was still playing a game of charm and spin with HR, pretending her photo was a harmless joke. I was playing chess. This wasn't about rage. Rage is messy, loud, unreliable. This was about calculation, about preparing a clean landing for my future self, the one who wouldn't have to share space, time, or name with someone who called another man her real partner. I poured myself a glass of water, sat at the dining table, and clicked through tabs. Our accounts were linked, at least the ones she knew about. But what she didn't realize was that I'd opened a private trust fund 3 months ago. Originally, it was meant as a backup, a safety net. Now, it was a lifeboat. I started small. I transferred my personal savings quietly and in chunks under reportable thresholds. Then came the brokerage account. I'd funded most of it over the years, using end-of-year bonuses and tax returns while she focused on retail therapy and curated girls' trips to Aspen. One by one, I untied knots. The next move was the life insurance. I navigated through the portal, updated my beneficiary. Her name disappeared from the document with one click, replaced by my sister Lorna. A woman who never liked Maribel but stayed respectful for my sake. I didn't call Lorna to tell her. She wouldn't gloat. She'd simply nod and say, about damn time. Then came the credit cards. I didn't cancel hers. That would have sparked drama. Instead, I reduced the credit limit to a modest figure, just enough for gas, groceries, and necessities. No more surprise spa weekends or charges at overpriced boutiques she only went to for the Instagram aesthetic. No alert, no notice, no call from the bank. Just a quiet tightening of the tap. Next, the shared checking account. That one took more finesse. I left enough for the mortgage autopay, utilities, and her standard grocery runs. Just enough to seem normal, but not enough to build any new castles. The rest, my portion, my earnings, moved elsewhere. I looked over the numbers like a general scanning a battlefield. Everything was accounted for. Nothing left behind. And it was all done without a word. No raised voices. No accusations. Just math. A new text lit up my phone as I was logging out of the final portal. From her. Maribel, we should talk. Short. Careful. Calculated. Maybe. I stared at it for a moment before flipping the phone screen down on the table like it had interrupted a symphony. We should talk. That's what people say when they want to rewrite the scene after the damage is done. But I wasn't interested in rewrites. I was finalizing the chapter. She didn't get a reply. I went to the hall closet, pulled down the filing box labeled Important, and opened the beige divorce folder again. It was all there. Asset listings, legal separation documents, statements of intent, custody waiver, no kids, thankfully. The papers were reviewed, notarized, and quietly waiting for the moment I decided to make them real. I thumbed through each page, checking that every number lined up. This wasn't about drama. This was about order. I didn't want chaos. I wanted closure. In the upstairs office, I packed away the last remnants of our joint life, framed photos, a couple of her business plaques that once hung on. After that, I moved through the house with intention. I wasn't just cleaning. I was rebalancing. The guest bedroom, once just a room we offered to friends or family, had been quietly prepped. Her things, what I hadn't already boxed, were neatly arranged. Shoes, toiletries, the stack of novels she never finished, and her favorite navy robe. The beige folder sat right on the guest bed, open to the signature page. I'd already signed mine. This wasn't punishment. This was design. By the time I finished, it was close to midnight. I stood in the doorway of the kitchen, the refrigerator humming like a tired engine, the clock ticking with deliberate certainty. We'd built a life in this house. Chosen tiles. Argued over cabinet colors. Painted walls on rainy Saturdays. I didn't hate those memories. I just understood now that they weren't enough to hold together a life being slowly hollowed out from underneath. I remembered the way she once looked at me when we signed the mortgage paperwork. Hopeful. Trusting. That woman? She was long gone. Replaced by someone who called her subordinate her real partner and still expected me to play the supportive husband while she curated her own narrative. So I left the house exactly the way she remembered it, tidy, calm, welcoming. Only, she didn't live here anymore. Not really. The version of me who tolerated half-truths and excuses? He'd been buried beneath her hashtags. This version? He understood execution. Quiet. Intentional. Final. And I was done talking. Tuesday morning began like any other for them, anyway. For Maribel, it probably started with hair curled, heels snapped on, and a forced smile aimed at her reflection. She was good at that, the illusion. The projection. I could imagine her brushing off whatever conversation HR had initiated the day before with a quick joke or a dismissive shrug. She always had a pivot in her pocket. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't have anticipated, was that the very foundation beneath her had already begun to crack. Because unlike the curated version of her life she posted online, real-world structures tend to buckle when you forget integrity is part of the build. Around mid-morning, my phone lit up. It was Jude. Just his name flashing on the screen was enough to make me pause mid-sip from my coffee. I answered, walking out onto the porch, my tone calm. Controlled. Talk to me, I said. Jude didn't waste time. You should have seen Harlan's face. My lips twitched at the edge, but I didn't smile. Not yet. He called me into the server room this morning, Jude continued. Said he needed the security logs from the conference hotel. Room numbers. Shuttle check-ins. Time-stamped card keys. He didn't say why at first, but I could tell something was under his skin. Then he showed me the post. There was a beat of silence between us. He had no idea? I asked, though I already knew the answer. None. None, man. He looked like someone kicked him in the stomach. Said, she's my senior account manager. She oversees 6 regions. Then just sat down and stared at the photo for like 20 seconds straight. I pictured it. Harlan, the type of boss who probably prided himself on running a clean ship, a man who trusted people like Maribel to carry the flag forward. Only to realize she wasn't carrying it, she was dragging it through the mud in front of her whole team. She and Trent were sharing a hotel room? I asked, already knowing the answer. Jude exhaled sharply. Yup. I didn't tell Harlan that HR already had it. One of the associates said they'd seen her come out of Trent's room at 7 a.m. wearing his jacket. Another said they ordered drinks on the same company tab late Saturday night, like 11 p.m., just the two of them. Whole team saw it. So it wasn't just a slip. It wasn't just a photo. It was a pattern. A visible, traceable breach. And people had noticed. They lit the whole building on fire, Jude added. You just handed HR the matches. I didn't say anything right away. I leaned on the porch railing, watching the wind rustle through the hedges I'd trimmed the day before. The neighborhood felt as quiet as I needed it to be, still and balanced. You're sure Harlan's taking it seriously? I finally asked. Oh, he's past serious. I overheard him in Celia's office. He said, if I sign off on this, I'm complicit. Then something about how they have a new contract going to the board next month, and he's not risking it blowing up because 2 employees played house on company time. A quiet pulse of something moved through me, not pride, not satisfaction. Just validation. Like the universe had finally handed back what it owed me, stamped and notarized. I think you broke something big, Jude said after a pause. Not just her rep. She was a finalist for a division lead role, Silas. Like global ops. This was her year. Was. I closed my eyes for a moment. Not to gloat. Just to breathe in the reality of what was no longer hidden. She did it to herself, I said quietly. Yeah, but you handed them the flashlight. After we hung up, I stayed on the porch for a while longer. Let the truth settle. Let it anchor me. Maribel had always walked a tightrope of charm and control, believing she could recalibrate any narrative with a grin and a glass of Chardonnay. But she never accounted for consequences. Not real ones. Not the kind you can't untag or delete. Later that day, I checked her social media again. The account was still up, but it had gone silent. No new posts. No comments. And the photo that started it all? Scrubbed. Not just deleted, scrubbed. Like someone had gone in and wiped it from the archive. But digital footprints don't disappear just because you panic. HR had what they needed. And now her boss did too. I wondered if she still thought this was just a bad PR day. If she believed she could show up with another rehearsed line and smirk her way back into good standing. That had always been her trick, rebranding the problem without ever resolving it. But corporate structure doesn't care about charm when money, liability, and public image are on the line. That evening, she didn't call. I expected she might, but nothing came through. Maybe she was busy spinning stories. Maybe she was sitting in a conference room with a silent panel and a printout of her own words on the table in front of her. Or maybe, for the first time, she was sitting in silence, staring down the reality that some decisions don't get a second draft. Let her feel it. Let her sit with the ripple of her own choices. This wasn't about revenge. This was the weight of accountability, and it had finally found its target. She came back 2 days earlier than scheduled. I heard the Uber pull into the driveway around 4:15 p.m. The tires crunching against the gravel, the low sound of the trunk opening. I was in the sunroom, sipping green tea, watching the light bend through the glass like nothing in the world was about to shift. But I knew. I knew from the second that car stopped who it was. How she'd walk up the steps, what face she'd put on, how her heels would click like punctuation on an unwelcome sentence. The driver helped her unload one roller bag and a smaller carry-on. She didn't look up at the window. Probably assumed I was inside, watching TV or pacing, waiting for her like a man desperate for closure. But I wasn't pacing. I was anchored. She tried the front door first. I heard the rattle of the knob, the telltale metallic thud when it refused to turn. Then silence. I didn't get up. I waited. A second later, the doorbell rang. Once. Then again, more insistent. Then a pause, like she was choosing her opening line. I walked to the front door, calm, measured. When I opened it, she was standing there with that perfectly constructed face, half apology, half disbelief, mascara still flawless, hair curled like she thought the right presentation might take the edge off what she'd done. "You changed the locks," she said, one eyebrow arched. I looked at her. Not through her. Not around her. Just directly, quietly, fully. "No," I said. "I changed the future." Her expression cracked for half a second, just a twitch at the corner of her mouth. She recovered quickly, tried to laugh, but it came out tight. "Come on, Silas," she said, gesturing vaguely to the door. "Let's just talk inside. This is ridiculous." It was one post. It was a choice, I cut in. Not just one. A series. She blinked at me, lips parting like she had something to say but couldn't quite find the spin. She looked past me into the house, eyes scanning for evidence of what had changed. She must have noticed the missing photos by the stairway, the absence of her shoes by the coat rack. I stepped aside, but not for the front door. I nodded toward the side of the house. "The guest house is open. Your things are there." She turned her head slowly, like she didn't quite believe me. "I boxed up what mattered," I added. "Labeled everything. You'll find the beige folder on the bed. Asset division. Already signed on my end." Maribel's jaw clenched. She didn't scream. She didn't curse. That would have been too raw, too unrehearsed. Instead, she gave me this look, part wounded pride, part calculation, as if she were waiting for me to realize I'd made a mistake and beg her back inside. But I didn't flinch. I didn't fill the silence with comfort. She finally stepped off the porch, walked down the side path slowly, heels clicking softer now, muted by the gravel. I didn't follow. I just watched her disappear toward the small cottage we once called the Overflow when her mother came to visit. The guest house had been cleaned, aired out, and furnished with nothing more than what she'd need. Her clothes, her skincare bottles, the 3 novels she kept by the bed. I even included the ceramic mug she always reached for, the one with the chip on the rim that she refused to throw out. Not out of sentiment, just habit. On the bed, I placed the folder. Clean. Neat. With a pin beside it. It wasn't just about logistics. It was symbolism. This wasn't her home anymore. It was her landing pad. Temporary. Conditional. Like the grace I was offering. She didn't come back out that evening. I imagine she sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, flipping through the folder, running her hand over the numbers and allocations, trying to measure loss like a spreadsheet, trying to see if she could reframe this, salvage it. But the terms were clear. Split assets. No alimony. Separate accounts. A clean, bloodless extraction. Later, I made dinner. Just for me. Stir-fried vegetables and jasmine rice, something simple. I ate at the kitchen island, alone. Peaceful. For years, we'd done that thing couples do, dancing around problems with routines. We had Tuesday takeout nights, Saturday errands, and the Sunday recharge ritual where she'd put on a face mask and scroll TikTok for hours while I read or mowed the lawn. But behind all that structure was distance, slowly layered until I couldn't see the foundation anymore. That night, as the guest house lights turned off one by one, I sat on the porch in the dark, letting the night breeze brush against my face. She'd walked into the fire herself. I just made sure she couldn't drag me into it with her. I knew the exact time her meeting started, 9 a.m. sharp. HR didn't play with lateness, especially not when the room was already humming with consequences. Durant and Voss had an entire floor dedicated to compliance, but when things turned serious, they reserved Conference Room 2B. That room had no windows. Just one polished table, always too cold, surrounded by chairs that somehow made everyone feel either too small or too exposed. That's where she was headed, dressed in cream and navy, like she was walking into a boardroom pitch, not a reckoning. She wore her war paint well. That blouse was one I'd seen her iron on promotion days. That watch was the gift I'd bought her during our 9th anniversary trip to Charleston, the one she said made her feel executive. She had always known how to frame herself for optics. Even now, as she entered the building, I imagined her posture, back straight, lips set in professional calm, heels clicking a measured beat of control. But inside that room, she wasn't in control anymore. Mr. Harland was already seated when she walked in, flanked by Celia from HR and a corporate attorney named Gina Markham. The tone was set before a word was spoken. The screen behind them displayed a folder labeled Internal Conduct Review, Maribel Merrick. Not allegation. Not discussion. Review. The kind of language that means decisions are already halfway made. I wasn't there, of course. But Jude was. Not in the room, but close. He had his ear to the hallway, working quietly, eyes down, pretending to organize AV cables while he listened through the open sliver of the door. She tried to lead. Jude told me over the phone later. Sat down and smiled. Asked if this was going to be quick. Harland didn't even respond. He didn't have to. Celia opened a manila folder and began laying out the timeline. First, the Facebook post. There it was, printed in color, the image of her tucked in close to Trent, the hashtag #WorkIsBanned for life. Hashtag still painfully visible underneath. She leaned forward, tried to explain it away as a joke, an inside team thing. It wasn't meant literally, she said. It's office culture. Everyone uses that phrase. I didn't think it would be taken seriously. But Celia was ready. She pulled out another printout. Internal text messages from the company phone system, Trent and Maribel exchanging emojis and phrases that were unmistakably personal. One of them included a line from Maribel. Can't wait for tonight, same room as last time, winky face. Then came the travel receipts. 2 company-paid dinners at restaurants off-site from the hotel venue, both for 2 people, both billed to her corporate card. Dates and times matched perfectly with Trent's card key entries from the hotel room logs. He'd entered room 612, hers, at 10:48 p.m. and didn't badge out until 7:21 the next morning. She tried to pivot, Jude told me, his voice low, almost apologetic. Said it was late, that he had missed his shuttle, that they worked late and just crashed after watching TV. But Gina, the corporate attorney, didn't blink. She slid across a photo that had been taken at the bar, the same one from Facebook, different angle. This time, someone from the team had captured them holding hands under the table. A blurred image, but unmistakable. Maribel froze. She knew then. I could feel it from a distance. The moment she realized she was no longer in a meeting. She was in a tribunal. Harland finally spoke. Jude said his voice was even, exhausted more than angry. You're not being investigated for poor judgment, he said. You're being reviewed for a violation of ethical conduct, breach of leadership standards, and financial misuse of company funds. This is not about perception. This is about your actions. She reached, apparently, for one last card. She claimed it was consensual, private, outside of company hours. That they were adults. That's when Celia brought up the power dynamic. Durant and Voss's Code of Leadership Ethics, Section 7. Managers are explicitly prohibited from engaging in romantic or sexual relationships with direct reports, regardless of consent, if one party holds evaluative or disciplinary authority over the other. Trent was her direct report. She had signed his quarterly reviews. She had approved his travel, bonuses, and training certifications. She had failed to disclose any change in their relationship status, failed to recuse herself from decisions regarding him, failed to notify HR of potential conflict of interest, all while billing dinners, drinks, and shared transportation to the company. At that point, she stopped defending. Just sat there, according to Jude, quietly blinking as the reality settled. She didn't cry, Jude said. Didn't yell. Just nodded like someone who finally saw the wall they'd been running toward for months. By the end of the meeting, Harlan didn't even ask for a rebuttal. He stood, said that further internal communication would be handled by HR and legal, and walked out without shaking her hand. Celia slid an envelope across the table, an interim administrative leave order, effective immediately. Her badge was disabled within minutes. Her work laptop access terminated. Email suspended. She was to surrender all company property within 24 hours. No farewell emails. No wrap-up calls. Just erasure. By the time Jude finished telling me everything, I was standing in the garage, hands still dusty from reshelving old paint cans. I hadn't moved. Just listened, letting it all settle in the space between who she used to be and who she'd just become. I didn't feel triumphant. I wasn't punching the air or toasting to her downfall. But I felt something settle in my chest, like justice, maybe. Or balance. Like watching gravity do what it does without interference. You drop a stone, and it falls. You betray trust, and eventually, truth calls the meeting. That afternoon, I saw her car pull up to the guest house. She didn't storm in. She didn't knock. She just sat in the car for a long while. I could see her through the blinds, gripping the wheel, unmoving. Finally, she got out, walked slowly to the side door. Her cream blouse wilted in the summer heat, her navy heels now scuffed with reality. I didn't go out to meet her. I stayed inside. Because her real meeting wasn't in that boardroom. It was in the aftermath. She didn't knock this time. Didn't bother with the doorbell either. She let herself in through the side entry of the main house like she still lived here, like nothing had changed. I was in the den, the old wingback chair beside the fireplace cradling me like it had every quiet evening before she turned our life into spectacle. My tea, untouched, rested on the armrest, steam curling lazily into the stillness. Then came the sound of the door swinging open, brisk heels on hardwood, and her voice. Sharp, breathless, cut through with disbelief. You sabotaged me. Not a greeting. Not a question. Just an accusation hurled like she had every right to hurl it. I didn't respond. Didn't turn my head. I reached for the tea and took a sip, the ceramic warm against my hand, steadying me. I know it was you, she continued, stepping further in. The HR email. The timing. You did this to ruin me. I lowered the cup gently onto the side table and folded my hands in my lap. She stood in the doorway now, arms crossed tightly over her cream blouse like she was bracing against a storm that she started. You're quiet now? Just going to sit there and pretend you didn't nuke my job, my reputation, everything? Still, I didn't speak. I had prepared for this moment. Not with words, but with distance. With insulation. You don't give a fire more oxygen when the damage is done. You seal the space, let the embers die on their own. You think this makes you noble? She sneered. You think because I made one mistake, you get to burn everything down? I turned my head slowly. Looked at her. Not with anger. Not even disappointment. Just that heavy clarity that arrives when someone finally reveals who they really are. One. I said, voice calm. One mistake. She scoffed. Oh, don't do that. Don't start tallying things up like you were some flawless husband. You were boring, Silas. Predictable. I needed more. I nodded once, slowly. Not in agreement, just in recognition. That was it, TH. Instead, I reached beside me and picked up a small, rectangular device from the side table. I pressed play. Her voice echoed through the room. Her exact words from 30 seconds ago, sharp and crystalline. You sabotaged me. I know it was you. You did this to ruin me. The recording stopped. She froze. Her eyes narrowed. You're recording me now? Please route all communication through legal counsel. I said. It wasn't just a line. It was a declaration. A wall she couldn't scale anymore. She blinked, stunned. The color in her face drained just slightly, like she wasn't expecting to be met with policy instead of emotion. Like she came ready for a sparring match, but found herself punching fog. Her eyes drifted past me, toward the hallway. That's when she saw the envelope on the entry table, the one marked confidential. HR correspondence. Her gaze locked onto it like prey to a trap, but she didn't move. "You don't have to do this," she said, a note of desperation creeping in now. "We can figure it out. It was just—" "No," I cut in gently. "You already figured it out. Every choice you made, every caption you posted, every ride you shared with him. You figured out what mattered. Now I'm just honoring it." She took a step forward, then stopped. "I'm still your wife," she said. "You were," I corrected. "But this house doesn't hold that title anymore. And neither do I." She didn't cry. I half expected tears. I think part of her did too. That maybe she could trigger some remaining flicker of pity. But I was too far removed. Not hardened. Just done. "I gave everything to this life," she said, voice breaking. 17 years. "And you gave the end of it to someone else," I replied. She stepped back slowly, breathing shallow. Her hands fell from her chest to her sides like they no longer knew what to hold. Then she said something that would have gutted me years ago. Maybe even months ago. "I don't have anyone left." There it was. The quiet horror. Not that I had responded, not that I'd exposed her, but that her safety net, the story she told herself about control and options, had snapped. She had thought Trent was an upgrade, a rush, a midlife spark. But HR didn't side with sparks. Her boss had gone silent. Her subordinates had turned into witnesses. And now, even I, the last piece in the old foundation, was stepping back. She turned slowly and walked toward the door. Not defeated, just weightless, like a person who realized the map she was following led to nowhere. I waited until the door clicked shut behind her. Then I rose, walked to the table, and picked up the envelope. Inside were copies of the HR memos Jude had slipped me, indirectly, through encrypted files. I'd never opened them again. I didn't need to. I already knew what they said. She was radioactive now. Not just inside the company, but to anyone tied to it. No recommendations. No quiet transfers. Just distance. I went back to the den, picked up my tea, now lukewarm, and sipped. This wasn't revenge. It was restraint. Because if I'd wanted revenge, I would have posted the emails, the bar tab photo, the text about the room key, publicly. I would have tagged her in a carefully worded goodbye letter on LinkedIn. I would have emailed every person she tried to climb past in the company. But I didn't. I let the silence do the work. Sometimes the most devastating thing you can offer someone who's built their life on attention is none. The courtroom wasn't large. It wasn't dramatic or cinematic, no marble columns or echoing gavels. Just rows of oak benches, a modest judge's bench raised slightly, and the dull murmur of legal proceedings being recorded by a stenographer whose face never moved. Still, it carried a weight. The kind that settled into your ribs and pressed down gently, reminding you that this was real. Final. Public. I wore a charcoal suit. Simple. Not flashy. Just the kind of thing a man wears when he knows he doesn't need to impress. Only to present truth with clean hands. Maribel sat across the aisle, flanked by her attorney, Ben Caraway. He couldn't have been more than 30, maybe 32 if you squinted hard enough. His briefcase looked borrowed. His tie was knotted too tight. Maribel had downgraded from the high-profile litigator she once hinted at hiring. Maybe because she thought it would be an easy split. Maybe because her reputation had already cost her too much. She didn't look at me, not directly. Her eyes flickered in my direction once, when I entered, but then she busied herself with flipping through papers that didn't need flipping. Her lips were tight. Her expression unreadable. Not remorseful. Not hostile. Just blank. The expression of someone trying to pretend they were somewhere else. The bailiff called our names, and we rose. Case number 19, CV 0870. Merrick versus Merrick. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Judge Margot Tallis presided. An older woman with short silver hair and clear disdain for theatrics. I liked her instantly. She didn't look for emotion. She looked for documentation, for evidence, for precision. Marcus, my attorney, stood with the calm of someone who didn't need to bluster to be right. He was everything Ben wasn't: measured, concise, unimpressed by distractions. Your Honor, Marcus began, this case is straightforward. We're not contesting custody, as there are no children. We are not contesting prenuptial agreements because there are none. What we are presenting is a clear case for financial division, based on marital misconduct that directly impacted shared resources, professional reputation, and contractual trust. Ben shifted awkwardly beside Maribel, cleared his throat. We would like to raise the issue of emotional equity, he said. Mrs. Merrick contributed significantly to the emotional and professional support of Mr. Merrick over their 17-year marriage. Her actions, while regrettable, should not nullify her claim to a fair distribution of assets, including potential alimony. Judge Tallis didn't blink. Do you have evidence of Mr. Merrick's financial dependency on your client? Well, not dependency, Your Honor. But an emotional investment should hold weight. After all, 17 years. Marcus stepped forward. We do have evidence, Your Honor. Not of dependency, but of breach. A documented HR investigation at Durant and Voss, where Mrs. Merrick was employed as a regional manager. The investigation concluded that she engaged in a workplace relationship with her direct subordinate, Trent Holloway. This relationship, undisclosed and overlapping with business travel, resulted in a policy violation that led to her termination. Judge Tallis turned to Ben. Is this accurate? Ben hesitated. Maribel didn't even lift her head. Finally, Ben replied, there was a separation from the company. Yes. The investigation. So we're not disputing costs, the judge said. Continue, Mr. Davis. Marcus nodded. We have internal documentation, timestamps, expense reports, and digital correspondence confirming Mrs. Merrick's behavior. There's no request for punitive damages. We're simply requesting a fair division based on the facts. I sat still as the documents were submitted, as photos were handed to the clerk, as screenshots and financial ledgers moved across the judge's desk like a quiet storm. Maribel didn't flinch, but she didn't speak, either. Her lawyer kept shifting, trying to soften the language, but you can't soften facts once they're signed in black and white. Judge Tallis reviewed the folder for what felt like forever, then removed her reading glasses and folded her hands. Given the nature of the dissolution and the documentation presented, I see no grounds to support an alimony award. The property settlement appears fair. Mr. Merrick retains the primary residence, vehicle, and 60% of shared financial assets. The remaining 40% will be deposited into a separate account for Mrs. Merrick upon finalization. Additionally, Mr. Merrick's life insurance policy and trust funds have already been legally redirected, and no reversal is warranted. Ben tried to object, his voice raised slightly. Your Honor, if I may. No, Mr. Carraway. You may not, she said, her tone sharp and absolute. You had every opportunity to contest these claims with counter-evidence. You brought sentiment to a documentation hearing. This court operates on facts. That was the moment I looked at Maribel, not out of vengeance or victory, but because it was the last time I would see her in a room with my name still attached to hers. She didn't cry. She didn't plead. She just stared at the table, not with sadness, with stillness. The kind of stillness that comes when a door finally closes behind you and there's no knob on your side. The judge signed the dissolution papers with a firm stroke. This marriage is legally dissolved. Next case. Just like that, we were unbound. I stood, thanked Marcus, and walked past her without a word. Not to be cruel, just to preserve the silence we both deserved. Because sometimes, the loudest thing you can say is nothing at all. The rose bushes were coming in strong that morning. I trimmed them with quiet focus, pruning dead heads with each snip, not out of anger, but routine. There was something satisfying about it, methodical, restorative. The sun had just crested over the neighbor's roof, slanting soft gold across the yard. Birds chirped high above like they hadn't read any of the emails, like they didn't care about inboxes or broken vows. I liked that about them. Somewhere behind me, the guest house door creaked open. I didn't turn around. I could feel her standing there. Maribel, watching me through the screened porch. She hadn't spoken to me since the hearing. No knocks. No apologies. Just long silences and short footsteps that started and stopped behind walls we no longer shared. At one point, she'd left a note in the mailbox, just one folded line. Can we talk? I never opened it. I didn't need to. I already knew every version of the conversation she was capable of offering. And none of them came with truth she hadn't already buried under a caption and a lie. That morning, I knew she was waiting on something. Had been for days. She hadn't said it, but I saw her laptop open on the kitchen island when I passed by the other day. Her phone was glued to her palm like oxygen. Notifications buzzed constantly, emails, alerts, maybe group chats where people were too polite to ask what really happened, or too afraid to be seen caring. But today, she was waiting on one email. One that would come with a decision sealed in corporate font and sterile phrasing. One final message from Durant and Voss. And I knew when it came she'd scream. It happened just after 11. I didn't hear the notification chime, but I didn't have to. The scream started low, a choked sound, the kind that belongs to someone who still believes there's time to undo what they've done. Then it rose, sharper, wilder. It wasn't dramatic. It was final. I stood by the rose bush, still holding the pruning shears in my gloved hand, the warm air brushing past me like nothing had happened. I didn't look up. I heard her voice through the screen door. No, 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 no. She stumbled into the yard, barefoot, still in the silk robe she'd worn like armor all week. Her hair was tangled from sleep, or maybe from tossing and turning through every minute of silence I'd gifted her. She had her phone in her hand, gripped so tight her knuckles were white. She was crying now, but the kind of crying that sounds like disbelief, like betrayal from a ghost she thought she could control. I let her speak first. They fired me. She stood at the edge of the lawn, not crossing it, not coming closer. As if the grass marked some sacred boundary now. I clipped one final bud and turned toward her. They let me go. No severance. No option to reapply. They said my behavior reflected poorly on the company and my judgment undermined the leadership structure. I said nothing. It was one mistake, she whispered. I turned fully to face her now, gloves still on, shears dangling at my side like a forgotten weapon. No, I said. It wasn't one. Her lip quivered, but I didn't feel pity. I felt clarity. Because that's what time gives you when you stop chasing closure from the person who fractured you. You're happy, she said, accusingly. You're just standing there like this is what you wanted. No, I said again, quieter this time. I just made peace with the truth before you did. She looked down at her phone, hands trembling now. I gave them everything. No, I corrected. You gave them the version of you that served you best. Until it didn't. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of the roses between us like an invisible line. You don't know what it's like, she said. To fall that fast. To have people look at you like you're poison. I do, I said. You just didn't notice. Because you were the one doing the pushing. She flinched at that, visibly. For a second, I thought she might walk forward, say something softer, something human. But then her spine straightened. Her voice sharpened again. You sent that email. You tipped them off. You planned all of this. Don't act like you're clean. I didn't plan your actions, I said. I just stopped protecting them. She blinked. That landed. And somewhere behind her anger, I saw her realize that everything that happened, the unraveling, the HR folder, the cold goodbye email, wasn't about punishment. It was about exposure. I didn't say anything else. I turned back to the rose bush and clipped another spent bloom. I could feel her watching me, but she didn't speak again. Eventually, I heard the slow steps retreating across the gravel path. The door clicked softly shut behind her. I let the silence expand around me. Later that afternoon, I saw the blinds in the guest house lower. No movement after that. No lights. Like the whole structure had folded in on itself. I made dinner for one that evening, grilled salmon, roasted carrots, and couscous with lemon zest. A soft jazz playlist played in the background, the notes gliding through the kitchen like a gentle affirmation that peace didn't always come with trumpets. Sometimes it just showed up with quiet hands and steady breath. I didn't check her social media, though I knew people would be talking. Durant and Voss wasn't subtle with their firings. Her absence would be obvious by now. The group photo from last quarter's conference, the smiling headshot on the executive page, all erased. Her inbox deactivated. The message would have read something simple. After internal review, your position is no longer tenable. Effective immediately. Thank you for your contributions. Signed, Julian R., Penn CEO. The man she once toasted at an executive retreat. The one who called her visionary in the company newsletter. Now, he was the one who digitally erased her in a single sentence. She must have read it 5 times before she screamed. I imagine she kept checking her spam folder, her LinkedIn, her other inboxes. Maybe she refreshed the Durant and Voss portal like a prayer. But there would be no follow-up. No soft landing. Just that sentence and silence. And me? I sat in the backyard again, tea in hand, as the sun dipped low and the cicadas began to sing. The grass swayed gently in the breeze. The same lawn she once thought was beneath her. The same soil she stepped over without thanks. I had kept watering it while she built castles with borrowed bricks. Now all the noise was gone. No meetings. No calls. No curated smiles or filtered lies. Just stillness. Just breath. Just me. And for the first time in 17 years, I wasn't holding my breath waiting to be seen. I had already found what she never thought I would: peace.